Okay, solving quadratics using the quadratic formula. So the quadratic formula allows us to find the zeros of any quadratic equation in standard form. Okay, but the equation must be equal to 0. So here our quadratic, here's our quadratic. This is standard form and it must be set equal to 0 for us to be able to use the quadratic formula. Now remember, the quadratic formula can be used to find the zeros. That's where y equals 0 in our table or on our graph for any quadratic equation. So you can use this at any time. So let's go ahead and dive into the first example. Now again, this is our quadratic formula. Notice it's negative b plus or minus. So this plus or minus gives us our two zeros, if there are two zeros. And then we take the square root of b squared minus 4ac. All that is over 2a. So let's look at our first example here. It says solve each equation using the quadratic formula. Round your answer to the nearest hundredth. Alright, so again we have to turn this negative 2 into a 0. So I'm going to do that by going plus 2, plus 2. So negative 2 plus 2 gives us 0. And then negative 15 plus 2 gives us negative 13. And then we bring down the x squared. Now before we actually use the quadratic formula, we want to look at the graph for this first and make sure it does cross the x-axis at least once. Otherwise, if it doesn't cross the x-axis, it's going to be no solutions. So I plug in x squared minus 13 into my Desmos. Notice it crosses the x-axis at 2 points. So we can use the quadratic formula and get those solutions. So we'll go ahead and sketch the graph. It looks like this. And we're going to use the quadratic formula to figure out the x value of where it crosses here and get the x value for where it crosses the x-axis there. So those are the zeros. Alright, so we have this in standard form. Notice I don't have a x term, so my b is going to be 0. X squared, there's a 1 in front of the x squared, so a will be 1. And then c, that's going to be negative 13. And so now I'm going to plug in a, b, and c into the quadratic formula. So this is going to be b goes here, so I'll put 0. B goes here, so I'll put 0. And then a, and then c, negative 13. All I'm doing is plugging it, is using the quadratic formula here. And we want to put parentheses around each number. That way it'll help us plug it into Desmos correctly. And then here I'm going to put a, which is 1. Alright, so on your test or your checkpoints, you'll have multiple choice questions. And a lot of times it's just going to show what's called the discriminant. Alright, so there will be a single number here, then you'll see b, and then you'll have your whatever 2 times 2 times a, so that gives us 2, so we'll put 2 there. And then our b is going to be 0, so we have to understand how to get this discriminant, which is underneath the square root sign. So is what we're going to do, we're going to use Desmos, and see this underneath the square root sign? We're going to just plug this that I have squared in orange, we're just going to plug that into our Desmos. No square root sign, just what's underneath the square root sign. So I'll show you what that should look like here. Okay, so this is my discriminant. Notice I just plugged in what is underneath the square root sign, and so that gives me 52. So here I can just put 52. Okay. So again, a lot of your answer choices will look like this. So that's why you have to be familiar. You can't just plug it into Desmos and get the solutions. That's why you have to be familiar with the quadratic formula. Alright, so now let's go ahead and actually get the x values from this. So all we're going to do is plug this, okay, this right here into our Desmos. And I have done that here. So here's the first one. Notice I put -0 and then plus square root of 52. All that is over 2 times 1. I can also just put 2 if I want to, because 2 times 1 is 2. And so there we go. So it gives us 3.605, and we want to round to the nearest hundredth. So one of my solutions is going to be this. I will write x equals 3.61. And now I want to get the other solution. Okay? So now I want to get the other solution, and I'm going to do that by going to Desmos. So watch what I have entered into Desmos. Notice I have the exact same thing, except I put minus this time. Alright, so we got minus here. And then also I can just, instead of 2 times 1, I can just put 2. And so here we have our other solution, which is -3.61. -3.61, so go here, and so my other solution would be -3.61. Alright, so these solutions, these are also zeros. We can also call them zeros. Notice that's exactly if I plug x squared minus 13 into Desmos. This is how I can check that we did the quadratic formula correct. I have my quadratic plugged in. Notice it crosses the x-axis here at -3.606, which we round that up to the nearest hundredth. That would be -3.61. And then same thing here, 3.61. Alright, so that is how you use the quadratic formula.